Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Ward, and this is the CBT Nugget series for ITIL Foundations. And today we're moving into another life cycle stage. We're going to move on to service transition. If you think about it, we've already been looking at this for a while, and we started off with our service strategy, and that was all obviously about strategy, your business strategy, your IT strategy, everything. And we wanted to see how we can take those requirements for those IT services, and then do something with them. But the problem is it's mostly concepts, right? So what do? You feed those concepts into the service design area. Now the service design, we talked about how we need to find out, okay, are we able to get the appropriate stuff that we need? What kind of service level is everyone going to want, not only from your standpoint, but also the customer? Then we create part of that from our service catalog. We need to say, well, what services do we already have, and what are we going to add to it? And availability management. We were talking about things like, we need to be able to make sure that things are available. Now, we also talked about other things like capacity. Do we have enough room for it? Do we have enough bandwidth, storage space, CPU processor, that kind of stuff for IT? And then now, though, we have to think, okay, well, now that we've taken those concepts, we've now going to transition those plans, those hard plans, into something that will allow us to get it into operation. And so with service transition, you have a total of 7 processes that cover transition. Now, the good news is we are going to only cover the top 5, okay? So the 2 down here are, well, I'll mention and tell you real quick what they are, but for the most part, the one for the exam are going to be the top 5. We're going to talk about transition, planning, and support. What are we going to do? How are we going to get things into play? We're going to talk about change management. Well, things are rolling around. What if somebody says, oh, wait, let's change that as we're rolling things out? How do we handle something like that? Knowledge management. Does everybody know what's going on? That's pretty much the easy way of looking at. Service asset and configuration management. We're going to talk about the assets that we have in order for that service to go out. Configuration management, making sure that it is set to the appropriate levels or particular requirements. We're going to have what they call configuration items that we're going to talk about. Then there is the release and deployment management. This is going to be where you say on Monday, we're going to roll out X, Y, and Z. On Tuesday, we're then going to test X, Y, and Z. On Wednesday, we are then going to push A, B, and C. Well, why did we do X, Y, and Z first? Well, that's all part of the release and deployment management because you need X, Y, and Z before A, B, and C. Well, at least in my world, I guess. Hopefully not in yours. Change evaluation. We need to see that once those changes have been agreed upon and approved, how well are they doing as we're rolling those out? And then service validation and testing. The last thing before we roll it in on a day-by-day basis is we let it run for a week. We let it run for a couple of days. And we test and we monitor and we make sure that everything is working. Let's use our example that we've been talking about throughout this Nugget series with Acme Coffee. So James and Jeremy have been working hard to provide a great experience for the Acme Coffee customers, and here they are right here. In fact, it's funny, I was on the phone with James Conrad talking about Active Directory rights management services. I go, hey dude, I hope you don't mind, but I kind of have you opening up a coffee shop in Phoenix. And he kind of laughed and he says, that'd be good. And he goes, I drink a lot of coffee. And if you ever listen to his Nugget series and Jeremy's, you know that they do like their coffee. I think they talk about 3 times as fast as I do. So don't use the speed option for them. But anyway, so they're trying to make sure that their customers are having a great time. But they've heard about how Starbucks is going to be offering a wine bar in limited locations, and because one of those locations is Phoenix, which I understand it is, they know it's vital that they have that service there. So it's going to be Acme Coffee and Wine Bar. Okay, so it's a coffee bar and it's a wine bar. Well, think about it. The meetings, the discussions about whether it's going to work with their current clientele, that is going to be service strategy. And the design of the building space, the ordering processes, looking at the capacity of the store. How many seats do we have? Are we going to have to add more chairs? Investigating, like local city codes on serving alcohol. Getting that, I don't know if you need a liquor license for it, but you need to know that. Hey, can I just do beer and wine without getting a liquor license? In some places you can, in some places you can't. That's all part of the service design, making sure you have everything ready to go. but now you need to get it into operation. But that's what that nebulous between period is, right? There, you've got the design, you need to get it up and running, but you don't just snap your fingers and, voila, you have a wine bar in place with knowledgeable staff who understand the intricacies of wine. And that is crazy. As a former Starbucks barista, I can tell you that learning coffee and its various varietals was hard enough, but wine is a whole nother universe, okay? But how do we make sure we don't interrupt the flow of our coffee and food services? Because obviously you've built a successful business with this. You don't want to cause problems. You don't want the other services to be interrupted. So we don't want to interrupt that. And how do we make sure the construction doesn't cause problems? How do we make sure that we have the inventory and the procurement down? Or maybe in the IT world, think of it this way. Maybe Acme Coffee is going to upgrade their point of sale system, their POS system. Maybe they're going to roll out Apple, iPay or whatever it is, or enable people to use Bitcoin to pay. All these things need a way to move from design to operation, and that, everyone listen to me, that is the goal of service transition. So some of the things that we need to do and want to, our primary objectives is we want to plan and manage our service changes with efficiency. We want to successfully deploy and remember, it's not only new services, maybe it's updated applications or services, could be. Make sure that the service changes meet the agreed requirements. Remember, part of getting to our value is warranty and utility, right? So we need to be able to make sure that we're setting all that. Educate people with the appropriate knowledge and information about the services and assets. It doesn't matter a hill of beans if you've got a great plan if nobody knows what the plan is or how to implement that plan. So education is going to be very important. We're going to talk about the Service Knowledge Management System, the SKMS, and that's going to be built up with all kinds of different elements like what we've already seen, like your supplier management information and all those kind of things. And then this is a big one. We need to manage the risk. Obviously, there's going to be a risk that on the day that we were going to go out and put the roof over the next section of Acme Coffee, it's pouring down rain or there's a windstorm. Well, that's a risk that we have to face. Well, what if we're opening these things in Florida and a hurricane's coming through, or hurricanes? Well, that's a risk. That's a threat that you need to know and understand. So these are things that we need to do in order to have successful service transition. If you haven't figured it out by now, I'm not only big into coffee, but I also like really geeked out stuff, like, in this case, Dragon Ball Z. And one of the things that I always liked about Dragon Ball Z is that one of the big bad guys is a guy named Frieza, or something called Frieza, and he's able to kind of transform from one thing to another. And that's why if there's now an internet meme on this whole thing where he says, "You fool, this isn't even my final form." Of course, said with the nice Japanese anime kind of a voice. But I'm really into that. And that's the thing is that you are not going to be into the final form yet until you transition from your plans into operations. So kind of think of it as a transformation from not having that service in play to having that service in play. So some of the benefits that you get from having a service transition period is that you are going to obviously have a lot better understanding of the cost, timing, and resource requirements. You have time to have thought it out. You know that, okay, we thought we're going to spend this much money, but maybe we're going to spend a little bit more. It also makes it easier for people to adopt and follow because you have been educating them all along on this is what we have, this is where we're going, and this is what needs to happen. We need to reduce delays due to unexpected clashes and dependencies. This really happens when you might have more than one team that is working on a service that's going out, and maybe you only have one conference room for your meetings, and this is where the conference call with the client needs to happen, and all of a sudden you got two teams all wanting to use the same. Okay, with the service transition, we know what our assets are that are available, or maybe it's the prototype lab that you have, and we need to run some stuff on this server. Well, no, I'm running stuff on that server. So transition, very important. Improve the expectation settings for all of your stakeholders. That's not only your customers, gang, that's also you. you, your team, your senior management. Make sure that any new or changed services are going to be maintainable. There's nothing worse than going through and saying, yes, we're going to be able to give you this service, and then find out that it took every single dime you have to make sure that you could maintain that one service, and meanwhile, all the rest of your services are not going to work, and now you're going to have to pull back. Well, you need to be able to maintain it. And then, of course, improve control of their service assets and configurations. So think about some of these, quote, benefits. They are benefits. I put my little quotes around it because those are things that you might see in a small lit room after spending a large amount of money to answer questions on a computer screen, where they say, well, what is, which of these is a benefit for, or, here's a benefit, which does it match? Service operations, service design, continual service, and you're like, oh, let's see, unexpected clashes and dependencies of assets. Oh, yeah, that's service transition. I remember that. So that's what these things are going to help you with, okay? So we've got a nice introduction. We're going to kick it up and start talking about the processes in our next nugget. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.